Ashok ji, did you hear about that Hyderabad IRS officer who was a woman before and now is a man and the government has recognized? So is it a gender identity change? Is it a sex change? And can anyone do that? And what are the rules and laws? I mean, can you tell me? It's very confusing.
Well, it's a very complicated issue. So let me answer your questions one by one.
चलो शुरू करें फिर. So what exactly has happened in this case of the Hyderabad IRS officer who's gone from becoming a woman to a man? What exactly has happened?
Well, in this particular case, what really transpired was that there is this civil servant, 2013 batch IRS Indian Revenue Service officer, who was born a woman, identified herself as a woman till she was assigned to the services. But down the line, she made an application to the government of India that she no longer wishes to be identified as a woman and wants to identify herself now as a man. So that's how from Anasuya she becomes Anukathir Surya.
So just the gender identity change. It's not necessary that this has also been accompanied by a sex reassignment surgery. Is it?
Yeah.
Am I right?
So basically, when you talk about change in your genders, it is basically happens at two levels. One is the sex reassignment surgery, where a person who's born as a woman after a sex reassignment surgery becomes a man. That's one way of doing it. So your gender changes from a man to a woman or from a woman to a man.
That is the surgery route.
That is the surgery route. That is permissible under the Indian laws. The second is the route of self-identification as to how a person identifies himself or herself. Whether a person identifies himself as a man or a woman. The genesis of all this law started in 2014 with the Supreme Court verdict in the Nalsa case versus Union of India case, and a judgment which was delivered where the court said that these people who identify themselves as transgenders should be identified as such and should not be pigeonholed into the identities of either a man or a woman.
Which is the third gender.
Third gender,
Yeah.
which is what we call the third gender. They also said that even though you may not be a transgender, you may be a man or a woman, but you can identify yourself as the other gender. And the reason they gave was that sexual identification or gender identification is a basic human right, and if this basic human right is taken away from an individual, that individual will not be able to enjoy his or her life.
Okay, so now that all of this has happened within the IRS. Now there are several other institutions also. So if we take this as precedence, then can this be applied to other government services also and probably the armed forces as well? Yeah.
As far as the civil services are concerned, you have to draw a distinction between the civil servants and the people who are first working in the armed forces. Both of them are governed by different set of laws. Now, if such a situation as you are asking me is to be transplanted into the military forces, that if tomorrow a Jawan or an officer who is a man but wants to identify himself as a woman, what happens? Then possibly a lot of interpretation of law will have to be required because they are governed under the
On their own
Army
service
Act,
rules, yeah.
on the service rules and the service laws.
So simple question. I am born a man. I identify as a woman, for example. In this organization, if I want to change my gender as a woman without having undergone that sex reassignment surgery, can I still do that, or will the HR tell me that no, get me this certificate, that certificate?
Then what happens is that you will have to go through a longish procedure, make an affidavit claiming that you do not wish to be identified as a male, but you wish to be identified as a female. After making that affidavit, you have to give it to a government department or the district magistrate in whichever area you fall. After his satisfaction, there has to be the publication of your will in the Gazette of India. Besides the publication in the Gazette of India, you will have to make a declaration in 2 leading newspapers of this country. And after all that process has been gone through, then you can claim that yes, look, I have completed all the formalities, the government has allowed me to do it, and hence you have to make this change. And only then will your organization permit you to make that transition from the male gender to that female gender.
But if it's a private organization and if I have all the certificates in place and all the permissions, as you mentioned, the government permissions in place, then no one can stop me from.
No one can stop you from identifying yourself in a particular gender type. But the organizations can still put a spanner by saying that, look, we are looking for
our company laws.
We are looking for a male employee. You are identifying yourself as a female employee. This position is available for a male employee. So we cannot consider you for this position. Possibly if you identify yourself as a woman, then you please opt for other position which we have for the female employees.
So law alone in this case is not enough.
As I said, the whole idea of sexual identification and sexuality is fluid. Times are changing. Just because times are changing does not mean that the society or the cultural setting in which you live will accept you for what it is. So a lot has to change at the societal level for accepting these changes.
It's a long road ahead.
It's a long road.